Welcome to Thinking Deeply About Primary Education, the podcast that makes time and space to think about pedagogy, teaching and learning, professional development, anything of interest to time-poor but enthusiasm-rich primary teachers. In this episode, we're going to go back into the archives to find an answer to a question from an inspirational teacher. For those of you who are hearing this answer for the second, third, fourth time, and hopefully it's a useful refresher. And for those of you who are hearing it for the first time, hopefully this points you towards an episode that you may want to listen to now. As you're listening, I think it would be fantastic to think about how you might respond to this question. And why not share it in the comments wherever you're listening, whether that be YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts from. I hope you enjoy this episode, and I hope it provides useful food for thought for your professional development this year. Without further ado, let's spend some time thinking deeply about primary education.
You've spent a few years working for Mathematics Mastery, an education company specializing in mathematics. And it'd be really interesting to know, what did you learn and would you recommend it to others?
I learned a huge amount in lots of different areas. I think primarily for me, I learned about different schools. So having taught in the same school for 6 years, it's in Norfolk, it's a lovely school. But we had, a quite homogenous group of homogenous cohorts. So I had never really experienced EAL pupils. Obviously I have met EAL pupils, but never in the sense that, I've now worked with schools who had, 97% EAL and who speak 30 different languages. And I'd never encountered anything like that before. I also have met a huge range of SEND pupils. And so I've had to think and tailor to more range of pupils than I would ever encountered in my career teaching. I've also met a diverse range of teachers. So I've worked with teachers who are unqualified. I've worked with teachers who have 30 years of experience and are a bit stuck in their ways and more resistant to change, and everywhere in between. So I think from that respect, it's a great way of seeing a massive range of schools all across the country, and the schools in Northern Ireland were a particular eye-opener because silly things like they don't get PPA. And I was like, how do you do all of, it's that kind of thing. You sort of realise how lucky you are to have just that time, because a lot of the schools in Northern Ireland didn't get that. It was interesting from silly points of view as well, because they say the word square differently. And so when I was talking to the children about shapes, they had no idea what I was talking about because I said square, and I'm not even going to attempt the accent, but it's much sort of smaller in the mouth, I suppose you'd say. And so it's very, so there was some language barriers, which were always interesting, considering we were all speaking the same language.
Vowels are very different. Because even when I say shape, it sounds like ship. And so I have to really enunciate whenever I'm talking to kids over here. But any words with vowels in them, or lots of vowels.
Yeah, I have that issue because I say graph rather than graph. And my Norfolk lovely children now are all saying graph, and it makes me so happy. But I think so in that respect, I think it was one of the best things I ever did. And in terms of my subject knowledge as well, it has meant, I think, and I don't know because I haven't tried, but I think if I ever wanted to be a regular classroom primary teacher, as in teaching all the subjects, I think that might be more of a challenge for me, because I'm now 5 years in, near enough, where I haven't taught anything except maths. But what I do know is that I've been able to spend all this time just thinking about maths. In Maths Mastery, we could spend 6 hours just talking about one tiny aspect of mathematics. I got to write an entire scheme of work essentially for year 6. I got to write 100 lessons for year 6 and plan it all and resource it all and sequence it all. And so those experiences, I think I would never have got any other way. And I don't think I would be in the job I'm in now if it wasn't for that experience. And for me, it reinvigorated my want to teach. I think I said earlier, right, I got to the point after 6 years where I wasn't sure that teaching was for me. And now I absolutely love my job again. And, and I think it took those 4 years out where I was teaching adults essentially and advising to make me realise that this is what I'm passionate about, this is what I'm good at. And actually now I'm teaching just maths and then spending the rest of my day thinking about a curriculum is just brilliant. So I think you asked me if I'd recommend it. I think yes and no. I think if you know in yourself that actually what you want to do is do something specialised, then I think working for an organisation that specialises in an area can only be a good thing. Because what I've learned is I don't think I'd have learned it any other way. Even going through the NCTM or anything like that, I don't think I'd have the knowledge that I do. However, I think if you do have, if you want to go into SLT in a primary school or do anything that requires you to have a really good knowledge of all the different subjects, then perhaps this isn't the path for you, because, I happily admit that my geography knowledge is not good enough to teach primary geography anymore, and I'm okay with that. But yeah, I think so. It depends on what you want to do with your life, I think.
Yeah, I think that the bar's definitely been raised in terms of what teachers are expected to know in terms of the wider curriculum. And I'm not even sure where Surrey and Sussex are. I know they're around about Kent, but I thought the whole thing was Kent for a long time. So, my geography.
I have a whole grey area. So I know the bottom of the country and I know where London is, but there's a whole band across between below London and above Portsmouth, Bognor Regis, Devon, Cornwall. I have no idea what happens there. Not a clue. But I'm okay with that. Yeah. North of England, I'm fine. But yeah, and I just think, teachers are required to know so much. Primary teachers are expected to be experts in every single subject. And if you can find a person like me or like yourself, Kieran, who has got that, deep knowledge of one subject, and you can get them in your school or in your trust or whatever, it can just make such a difference for maths teachers, for primary teachers, sorry. Because if I can help them out with these connections and with this language and with great ways to teach maths, it just means that they still have to think about it, but they can concentrate developing their subject knowledge on, I don't know, where these strange places that aren't Kent are, or whatever it might be.
Yeah, and I'd love us to adopt a specialist model, because I've seen it work in other countries, and maybe teach 2 or 3 subjects. They teach maths and 2 of the sciences, perhaps, because I think you'd probably get a lot more people coming into teaching because they're teaching solely about what they're passionate about. But
yeah,
who am I to dictate government policy at the minute? We'll see one day.
I worked with an academy chain in London who did exactly that, and it meant that they could teach a wider range of the wider curriculum. So they had someone who had specialised in Latin, and so they were teaching the kids Latin, and they had someone else who was doing had done ancient history as a degree, and so they were doing that, and it was fabulous. And I know it wouldn't necessarily work for everybody, and you would have to have teachers that we couldn't all apply to your school because we're all good at maths. But yeah, I think there is power in allowing the freedom to teach in that way, particularly in Key Stage 2, having that balance between the teacher, you're not having 17 different teachers or whatever it might be. So they've got that continuity in terms of they're seeing the same adult regularly, but having specialisms is I think can only be a good thing.
Yeah, maybe one day, you never know.
Who knows? We'll change the world, Kieran. We'll